Welcome to Wine and Dine, your new favorite intoxicated basketball podcast.
We are back. It's been a minute since we've done a little bit of podcasting, but we relaunched, rebranded. We're on a whole new thing, setting off on our own. It feels pretty nice.
Yeah, so for any of you, maybe one of you that listened to the Duck Drawer, we have something new. So yeah, we decided to a little bit of a pet project we were working on offline. We like to talk about wine, and we like to talk about basketball. So we decided, how can we merge these things? And now here we are, drinking wine and talking about basketball. Feels pretty good.
We got to talk a little bit about the wine we picked. Actually, we're talking about like theming the wines for the episodes. And I think after watching the Olympics, watching the French team come in silver, both men's and women's in basketball, seeing like French players starting to come to the NBA en masse. Return of Kirsten Yabusele, return of Gad Williams. I think we had to go French, and we went with the Côtes-du-Rhône for this one, and it's so I can model it for the camera.
Yes.
Like backwards.
Hashtag product placement. Famille, Perrin, if you're like watching somehow.
Yes.
We like you. Please send us wine. Yeah, right? Send us wine. Yeah, so I guess a little housekeeping. We're gonna be every other Tuesday. And yeah, like Chris said, we're just gonna pair a wine with an episode, and this one, really nice Côtes-du-Rhône. So I guess for those of you unfamiliar with French wine, because it's also very confusing, I'm not gonna lie. Côtes-du-Rhône is a blend of Grenache, Syrah, and Mourvedre, which is a French grape. It's grown in the south of the Rhône Valley in France, which is the Rhône Valley is like the most important winemaking region in France, arguably. So the bulk of it comes from, this particular wine comes from like Orange, France, which is kind of in the south. So yeah, it's really tasty, and I think it kind of encapsulates like overall a pretty good Olympic tournament. Like, there was a lot of ups and downs. Even for Team USA, even though they won every game, there was still some ups and downs. So it was good. And France, the host nation, making it to both finals was probably a good start. So yeah, we'll figure out, I don't know, we'll probably keep talking about the wine throughout the episode, but at the end of the day, the goal of this podcast is just to sort of bring some of our boozier conversations to the airwaves.
And honestly, like, I'm actually really happy with this bottle. Like, this is the first one trying this particular one. I've had some Côtes-du-Rhône before, and like, I'm getting like, it's a really bold one, which I appreciate. Like, I know some people are a big fan, like the lighter, subtler wines. I like a big, bold, like fruit forward joint. I'm a bit of a wine novice, so I'm not like the most advanced with the wine notes and all that stuff. But I gotta say, like, anything that's got like bold, like dark fruit, like notes in it, like I am there. Like, that is very much my wheelhouse. So I was very pleased that you picked this one today.
Well, actually, so shout out. So I guess for anyone who doesn't know my background, I actually work in the wine industry. So my goal is I'm working on towards becoming a sommelier. So I have a little bit more wine knowledge maybe, but I really enjoy it. It's a really fun industry, and it's really cool to talk about wine and drink it, obviously. But shout out to my coworker, actually, who helped me pick this wine, because I knew we wanted to do a French wine, but I am woefully unfamiliar with French wine. So this was a good one. The last Côtes-du-Rhône I had was definitely a lot lighter in body. I think it was a little more Grenache than Syrah. So this one's definitely nicer. I like it. It's a little bit more like forward. I like the spiciness too. I like the spiciness aspect. That really comes through in this one versus the other Côtes-du-Rhône that I had. A lot more spice. Yep. So I'm into it. It's definitely really nice. And besides, it's, lots of cherry notes, which is like, it's summertime, so it's cherry season. So why not?
Man, my go-to, like when I'm just like, getting a bottle of wine from the van, bringing it over to somebody's place or whatever, like my go-to is like, I love a good like Australian Shiraz, and like this feels like it's you're getting a lot of Syrah grape in there, so it's like kind of in that family. Yeah. So this is this is my jam.
But
people who are like scared of red wines, and like they're like, oh no, what if it's too dry, whatever. They're scared of the tannins. They think every red wine is a Cabernet, right? And so like a lot of times with the Shiraz is what I'm bringing over. It's gonna be something like it's pretty easy on the palate. Like, it's a lot of flavor, but it's easy on the palate. It's not going to like necessarily something where like, oh, you have to have had 10 of these to even like appreciate the flavor of it. It's not going to beat your ass. You know what I mean? You don't need to
you don't need to drink it with food either. I find sometimes like my biggest challenge with cabs, I love them, don't get me wrong. And I think so, like, as New World wine drinkers too, we're so accustomed to drinking cab. That's just like the most popular varietal in the world, and it's absolutely the most popular here. Partially because it's like, it grows particularly well in California, right? Like, it requires a warm climate. So that's why the Napa Valley and places like that do so well growing cab. And I think we're all just accustomed to that's like the main varietal that we're all exposed to. And so, yeah, something like a Shiraz. But like Syrah definitely, I don't know, are you familiar with the difference between Syrah and Shiraz?
Other than the Australians, like they probably can pronounce things differently. I'm not actually super familiar.
All right, so I guess we'll lay down a little education. So it's actually the same grape. So Shiraz and Syrah are the same grape, but it's basically just a difference in winemaking. Syrah is like a more classic, like cooler. It's grown in more like the Syrah indicates like a French style of winemaking, which usually means it's from a cooler climate, and then it's a different process of oak aging and stuff like that. Shiraz is more of like Shiraz references the Australian style of winemaking, which that's really who popularized it. I think some of the oldest Shiraz vines are in Australia. And it's definitely more associated with like a warmer climate, so a lot more like big, bold, ripe fruit, whereas Syrah is more of like a fresh and spicy kind of red wine. Not necessarily a lot of tannin in either, like you said. It's like not as scary to people because there's a lot less tannin, and I definitely can empathize with that because I'm not always really into super tannic wine. And so, yeah, that's basically just it. It's just a difference in winemaking, kind of like Pinot Gris and Pinot Grigio too. But yeah. Syrah is more, which is I definitely like the Côtes-du-Rhône, is more that traditional style where it's about kind of like that fresh sort of fruit and spicier, whereas Shiraz tastes a little bit more like, can taste jammy at times if it's like over, like if it's a sweet one, but just a lot more of that like really big, bold, like more cooked fruit kind of flavor. So
that's one of the cool things that I liked when I first started. So I worked at a wine shop a number of years ago. My job actually was liquor, not wine, so I wasn't like brought up at like the expert level. But one of the things that I found really interesting when I first started getting to drink a wine, like in my early 20s, was that you take the exact same grape, grow it in two different places, and the flavor profile is like completely different.
yeah,
And like obviously, if you take a grape that's grown in France versus, Western Australia, there's a lot of Shiraz out there, right? And we're talking about a place that it's 42 Celsius was the temperature when I arrived. For the folks back home, that's about 105 Fahrenheit. Shout out to the Fahrenheit system doing its thing since whenever that shit was invented. And it is a very different climate, man. And the flavor is definitely coming through differently in the wine. This is one of those really, really fascinating things. It's not as noticeable with like food crops as it is with wine, I feel like. It's like, differences in potatoes grown in like South America versus in like Idaho. But I feel like you're not really as
pretty much
with
the
like
same.
wine. I feel like it's more obvious. You know what I mean?
it is. So like when I was doing my WSET course, which I guess for any non-wine people, WSET means Wine Spirit Education Trust. And it's based in England, and it's kind of like something that in the industry they've meant to sort of like, I guess, provide qualifications for, for wine, things like that. And it's meant to sort of create like an objective kind of like central sort of lexicon describing it so that we can kind of like make something that's really subjective a little bit less subjective, like kind of judging quality, things like that. And then being able to pick out like flavor profile, just like the language itself of what we're describing. And so there's 4 levels to it. I just did my level 2, which is kind of still pretty basic, but like a lot of it was actually learning about like growing regions and stuff and like climate and like how elevation affects things, like how proximity to water, things like that, what the most versatile grapes are, which like the least versatile grapes are. So for instance, like Chardonnay, it's the reason Chardonnay grows pretty much in any country because it's one of the most versatile grapes. It can grow in a really cool climate, which gives it like, but it's very different no matter like based on where it's grown. Like if you get a classic French Chablis, it's grown in a cold region. So there's a lot of like acidity, really fresh, like light fruit kind of aromas and flavors, and you're not going to oak that thing because you don't want to get rid of that freshness. Oak aging takes away a lot of freshness. But when you get California Chardonnay, it's from a really hot climate. So it's really like more like stone fruit, tropical fruit. It's like usually oaked because you don't need to hide freshness. You're usually trying to add notes of like spice and like vanilla, even some of that buttery flavor. Like California Chardonnay can be very buttery.
Right.
Yeah.
Just to give it like a little more complexity, or like is that why they oak it?
It adds to the oak aging. Essentially, just adds complexity to any wine. What it does with red wines is it smooths tannins. With whites, it adds different flavors. So like when you get like a buttery flavor in a Chardonnay, that comes from what's called malolactic conversion. And that happens during oak aging. So basically like it creates like a buttery flavor. If it's oak aged in contact with some of the dead yeast particles, then it will give like bread and biscuit, like cooked or baked goods, kind of like that spicy like caramel or like bread kind of aroma.
Are we talking like the British style of biscuits where it's like,
Yeah, like shortbread.
Like sweetness cookies, or are we talking about like Southern biscuits where it's
no, like something.
We're not talking about Bojangles biscuits?
No. We're not talking about Popeye's biscuits. We're talking about like
that would be dry. That shit would dry.
So dry.
No,
it's
foul it out.
It's just absorb all the moisture off of your tongue. No, I'm thinking more like shortbread cookie, like that kind of like baked goods kind of vibe. But right. There's a reason like why California Sauvignon Blanc is first of all kind of rare, but also just it has a completely different flavor profile than New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc or French Sauvignon Blanc, because the climate in California is just so much warmer, and Sauvignon Blanc grapes are at their best in a cooler climate. Or like Malbec is a French grape, but it does best in Argentina because it can be grown at a really high altitude, and it likes the altitude and it likes a lot of heat. Argentina gets hot. So Malbec does well. It's really interesting. It was crazy how much, like, honestly, most of the exam and stuff was just remembering like how climate affects things. And
it's weird how many like French grapes there are where like I've only had them from outside of France. Like Malbecs, I've pretty much had only South American ones. Sauvignon Blanc, I've had mostly like New Zealand and South African ones. Like I don't think I've had a French Sauvignon Blanc ever, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't actually know if I have. It's mostly New Zealand and like some BC, like Canadian wine. British Columbia does produce some really nice Sauvignon Blanc because it's a cooler climate. Pinot Noir, same thing. It's a cool climate. It's why it does really well in Oregon, because Oregon has a pretty similar climate to parts of France. And so
there's some beautiful ones in the central coast of California too, like Monterey Bay. There's some very nice.
Yeah, California Pinot tends to be a lot sweeter because the grapes just get riper because it's warmer. So if you like a sweeter Pinot Noir, definitely California. If you want that classic French, light, fresh kind of like fruit, then you'll probably go for something from Oregon or like France or even British Columbia again, like can produce some good ones. But Oregon Pinot Noir is kind of like the new world standard right now. Really good Pinot Noir from France is pricey. Like, because Pinot Noir grapes are insanely hard to grow. They're a pain in the ass.
Right.
Yeah. Much like rooting for the 76ers, they'll break your heart.
This segue.
Yeah. We gotta still, I guess we are technically a basketball podcast, so I guess we eventually should get to that. But I guess maybe real quick, should we explain why we're doing this weird little niche merging of the niches? Why we're doing this podcast?
Because it's more fun to pod tipsy than sober, I get.
No, that's true. I don't disagree with that. I guess for me, like I've since I started working in wine, especially, I've just become really fascinated by like why, like how the wine world's actually connected so hard to the NBA, especially, but even the WNBA and just basketball in general. It's kind of just so interesting to me how like of all the things that's like become basketball and wine are just like kind of linked, and it's mostly through like players and coaches. Like Pop, I think, was maybe one of the first to really like popularize his like love of wine. But
he'd take interview questions about it, like during press conferences and stuff.
Right, he'd rather talk about wine than basketball at a press conference, which is hilarious. I mean, I don't disagree.
82 games a year, man. That shit gets old after a minute. Like,
facts.
How many ways can you say we didn't play good enough defense today? Like,
may as well talk about your wine cellar. I don't blame him, honestly.
Yeah,
I'm sure it was causing. I'm sure it was like a lot more interesting to him at one point to do that. Yeah. So I don't know. I just think it's interesting to me. I don't know. We're gonna do a lot of random content, so I also think it's a fun way. Like, so the idea is we're gonna, like you said earlier, we're gonna pair a wine with the theme of every episode, and I just think it's kind of a fun way to like explore the idea of a wine pairing and what it can be, because most people associate wine pairings with food specifically, when you can also pair wine with a vibe of some kind. Like there's music and wine pairings. There's all kinds of things like that. So I did, a basketball and wine pairing article for the intermission, and it was a lot of fun, and I liked kind of like trying to expand on that, like kind of what fits the personality of each team, or like why we watch a game, or what we want to talk about. I think is like really interesting because there's a wine for every vibe.
I think we need an RJ Barrett like 40-point game so I can break out an Ontario wine, or
we'll definitely
get back into coaching so we can break out some BC.
We'll do a Niagara VQA when RJ Barrett tears it up for the Raptors this year, because I have a feeling he's going to be unlocked in Toronto. Just based on the end of last year, he seemed to me.
I'm rooting for him. Once a Nick, always a Nick. I'm rooting for him every day.
It seems, of all the players who get to play in their hometown, I feel like he's actually the one who's going to be able to handle that burden probably the best. Like, because I think he is so tied to like the Canadian national team and stuff like that. It's not just the fact he is Canadian. He's actually played for Team Canada basketball, and he's like meant a lot to the program, and his dad has, and like he's really highly connected that way. Just just like really deep roots, and he was like happy to come home. You could I don't think he wanted to leave New York, but if he's going to get traded anywhere, getting traded to your hometown is pretty cool. And
that's doing right by your former player to trade him to. If you're going to trade him, you know what I mean.
And I think
from like that's pretty good.
And I do think that the Raptors, like the system that Rajakovic is trying to create, will actually benefit RJ a lot because it's a lot more ball movement. He can cut a little more, just get easier looks. But he also is just such a good like bully ball kind of player that like will get to the free throw line and kind of adds that element to the offense that the Raptors don't always have. And his 3-point shooting is a little shaky, but it seemed like he was shooting pretty well at the Big Bank Arena, so maybe that home court advantage to help him out.
I think it's cool. I think maybe this is a little bit unfair because like obviously the Raptors fan base is huge. I feel like the pressure is a little bit different.
It is for sure. That too.
I think the fan base is. I mean, I have seen them get on people, but I do feel like there's an element of like supportiveness that isn't necessarily in a lot of big city fan bases.
It does depend. I mean, there was some pretty hardcore racist attacks against Pascal and people like that. So it's been.
That's gross. That's all.
Yeah, so like the Raptors fan base hasn't always been wonderful, but I do think he'll get a lot of like national media kind of like love for the fact he's playing for his hometown team. People eat that shit up, and I think that the support system, like he has a good support system, and I do just think he seemed to really vibe with like Scottie and like you're right, the pressure's different. Like especially now that the Knicks are good. Like the Knicks fan base is probably like it's a total pressure cooker, and like he was always one of those players who's going to elicit like really extreme reactions just because his game is like interesting. Like
things were like it is and it isn't at the same time because like I have the sense that for the background I don't for new listeners or whatever, I'm a Knicks fan, she's a Raptors fan. I feel like the sense with Knicks fans was that we always liked RJ, but he never really was like
a player who's supposed to
love
be.
Affair.
He was never. He wasn't the prince he was promised.
I think it was like a number 3. I think we all kind of knew going in that we came out of the draft. It was the year that Zion and Ja were drafted. And I think it was kind of seen as a 2-player draft. I know that RJ was higher than a couple of them, like as a high school prospect. But I think it was kind of seen as a 2-player draft. And we knew we were getting number 3, right? And so the expectation was just like, hey, we hope he becomes a star. It wasn't necessarily that we thought he would necessarily guarantee to become a star, but we were hoping he would. And so he kind of was in this in-between zone where it was like there was some pressure on him, but then there also wasn't because we kind of knew that he wasn't Zion or Ja from the jump because those are players with just special athleticism, right? I mean, even taking skill out of the equation, which all 3 of them have, there's a level of athleticism that they have where it's like you can project their ceiling to the fucking moon. You know what I mean?
No, it's true.
Where with RJ, he's a plus athlete, but he's not this dude who's going to suddenly accelerate past you and dunk over 4 people and leave you looking, with your jaw dropped. Like, he's not that guy. And so with him, it felt like it would be a more subtle type of starter. And I felt like there was a little bit of pressure on him early, but he was scoring like 18 a game as a rookie, whatever. Like, it was inefficient, but he was on a bad team. And he kind of got it together here and there. He had some good seasons shooting, like a second year, like 40% from 3 all of a sudden. Next couple of years wasn't as great, but I get the feeling that he was well liked, but because he was kind of like a quieter personality, it wasn't necessarily embraced in quite the way that like Emmanuel Quickley was.
Yeah.
Where Quickley, a bigger personality for one, like that's obviously something that, the media capital of the world would latch onto. But the other thing with him was like, again, expectations, right? 25th pick in the draft as opposed to 3rd. When you get the guy 25th, you're just hoping he becomes a contributor, right?
He also has some electricity to his game that RJ just doesn't. Like, I love RJ Barrett to death, but there's something... Because Quickley... And we have both of them now. Anyway, I love Emmanuel Quickley, but Quickley has this kind of, like, sort of, like electric, like, slinky kind of vibe to him that, like, just, like, sort of geared to his game that RJ doesn't. And he also has at least one really elite skill, like a 3-point shot, that RJ doesn't really have. Like, RJ doesn't have one really elite skill. He has like 3 or 4 really, really good skills. And I think that's where you kind of get to that, like what you were saying, like he's good, but it was never super efficient. It was never great. Like, and he was really well liked. He was never like dragged. People didn't hate him.
Mhm.
But he was just maybe not like the prince that was promised, or he just didn't have that like je ne sais quoi that the other players drafted around.
Yeah. With Quick, it was interesting because like coming out of the draft, the story about him was, all right, he's a shooter, right? We thought he was going to be a catch and shoot guy. Wasn't really sure where exactly he'd fit in, but the whole thing about him was he can shoot it, right? And then when he got to the team, seeing him like slink into the paint, draw fouls, kind of like that veteran style, like kind of foul baitiness. There was the floater that he would launch from like 15, 16 feet sometimes. Like that, I think that really impressed and surprised people. And I think there's just an element of, watching him grow as a defender, watching him grow as an on-ball player, seeing him turn into a different type of player than we were told we were getting.
Yeah.
As opposed to with RJ, we've seen him improve, but he's been a better version of the player that we knew him to be. Whereas I think with Quickly, there's that element of surprise, there's that element of like, man, we never thought he would be this. That I think, and that combined with having that big personality, being like super personable, super open and all that stuff, I think that made him, with RJ, it was like, is our guy, we'll defend him. But with Quickly, it was like people would run through a brick wall for him. It was like a different level of like fan support. And that was the one where like, and I feel bad because like RJ, higher scoring average, ostensibly in some ways a better player. He was a starter, Quickly was a backup. But in some ways, like when that trade went down, like that Quickly leaving was the one that gutted me,
Well, I think also, that was probably the case in part too, because Quickly, I think, clearly has a higher ceiling as well. Like, or at least appears that he has like a much higher ceiling. So it's kind of like it feels like you're losing on more potential than you are with RJ. Even though I do think RJ is not done growing and there's a lot of potential still there, I just think that like the Knicks system didn't really work for him. And his style of player, and like that was, like he can be something different. So like I think that's probably why there's maybe like a more of a feeling of loss to Quickly than RJ. But I feel like it was a good trade.
RJ may still be like a better player in some ways, but I think that there's an element of unknown with Quickly where it's just like, you know what I mean? Like who knows what new thing he might add to his game? Whereas I feel like RJ is just refining the stuff that he came in with. If that makes sense.
No, and I think RJ also has a body type that you miss more. Just that he's a bit longer, he's a bit bigger, he's a bit stronger. Not that Quickly's like a bad defender or anything like that, because he's not for the most part. I think he at least works hard. But he is a bit
really good team defender.
Yeah, but he's slighter, and he's a little bit like he just doesn't have that like kind of like physical kind of a physicality, I guess, really, that you could potentially miss. So yeah, I could see that. But I'm feeling optimistic about RJ's opportunities with Toronto. He did have a pretty good Olympics from what I can remember, but at the end of the day, I guess since we're here to talk about the Olympics, we should probably transition. So RJ
with the Olympics, what's it like being a fan of a team that didn't make it to the middle round?
Yeah, it sucks. I'm far more disappointed in the women's team than I am in the men's team. I am disappointed in the men's. Yeah, I'm disappointed in the men's loss. But I do think that there's just some roster constraints that were always going to be a problem. And
the lack of big.
And Shea kind of covered up a lot of that in round robin play. Bigs for sure. Having Zach Edey would have helped a lot. Even if he wasn't like a great offensive player, just the size would have been helpful on defense.
Yeah, I think being able to play true zone in international ball helps a little bit too.
And the fact
all those balls rolling around the rim, like.
Yeah, and the fact that he's also just a much more physical presence too, and you can get away with a lot more kind of grinding in FIBA. It would have really helped having that. I do also think the lack of just guard production was a bit frustrating outside of Shea. But that's kind of the nature of the players you're also playing. Like Dylan Brooks has never been known as anything but streaky. In fairness,
on Jamal Murray.
Yeah, like in fairness,
on him.
I don't think that was fair. As much as I was frustrated by Jamal. I also think that like he was clearly injured. He was injured during the playoffs for the Nuggets. He was fighting shin splints for like the last quarter of the season, at least. And it's not like that went away magically between the end of them being out of the playoffs and the start of the Olympics. Like that shit takes forever to heal. So he had and he also had that calf issue too.
Yep.
During
that was the one. Yeah, he was battling that the entire second half of the season, basically.
Yeah. So like he wasn't healthy, and you know what? Like after years of the team never getting commitment out of our biggest stars. And then Jamal just like the way that his career broke around kind of these windows made him not be able to play, but he was always at least verbally committed. He was always like committed to the program. He showed up to things when he had to. He was part of that group of players that really committed to wanting to be there for Canada. And so I give him credit for that and still showing up. And, you know, he wasn't at all good in any way, but he was definitely injured. And at least it was just nice to have him show up for the program, to be honest, because players like Andrew Wiggins and whatever just like never have. So yeah, I do think some size for sure in the front court would be very helpful. It was too bad that Olynyk kind of stunk it up as bad as he did, because he's got an interesting skill set and he's just been such a like Iron Man for Team Canada for so long that you was kind of hoping that he would have a really good tournament now that he finally has really good players around him, because he played well during the World Cup. So that was a bit disappointing.
It seems like it'd be like I got to deal like FIBA big in some ways too. There's not a lot of like vicious like athletic shot blockers in FIBA. Like he's got like the high post game, he can pass it, he can shoot
a good shooter. Freddie good shooter.
I mean? Like he seems like a very FIBA player, and so it was a little surprising to see him struggle. But
he's had a really solid
teams now. Built different than FIBA teams used to be built.
Well,
see how France is built; they're very different. Yeah,
he's had a solid FIBA career. I just think that at the end of the day, he's still too small. Like he is a 5, but he's not like a very big 5, and none of our 5s really were. So that didn't help.
Yeah, having to turn to Dwight Powell was not super ideal, I would say.
No. Much like the Mavericks for all those years, where it's like they just ended up fucking turning to Dwight Powell, because at the end of the day, it's like apparently nothing we ever try is better. Like credit to Dwight Powell for just hanging on there like a barnacle hanging onto a ship or something. Like he will not let go, and I respect the hell out of that. He works hard, but yeah.
So why were you more disappointed in the women's team than in the men's team? I felt like the men's team, at least on paper, had I guess relative to their competition, like a more talented roster. I'm curious why the disappointment in the women's team.
The women's team didn't even make it to the knockouts. We didn't make it out of the group stage.
I mean, yeah, that's fair.
Like, this is a team that has had expectations for a few years now. I mean, it's since the last Olympics. So I guess for me, what kind of like, it comes off as a little homery just because I liked our previous coach. But I think I'm just frustrated at the fact that it's like we underperformed at Tokyo, despite obviously COVID really like messing with our ability to, because the offense wasn't being changed, things like that. And then we fired the coach because we underperformed, and then we got knocked out in the exact same way 4 years later with having this coaching staff the entire time, and pretty much all the same players. So it's kind of just like, obviously there's something else going on in the program. I do think some of our young talent just needs to like catch up, frankly. Young, like it's a really young team outside of like there's a big age gap in the veterans, right? You've got like your vets like Kia Nurse and Natalie Achanwa, and then you've kind of got like your Leah Edwardses and some of those players, but then you've got like Silas Swords, who just graduated high school. So, and she put in some good minutes at the end. Like everyone looks really good. I'm just a bit kind of like at a loss for like what happened, you know? So yeah, I don't know. I think Team Canada's run was just a little disappointing for me. I think there's a lot of room to grow, so like I'm still optimistic about the future. I'm curious what happens with like the coaching decision and whatever. I mean, it's just funny to me that the coach we fired made it further in the Olympics with Germany than we did.
I know that feeling well. Well, not the exact one, but the like U.S. soccer, the best American coach in the market, we decided not to hire him for some reason, and we went back to the same dude they had just gotten rid of a few months before, and that American coach is the coach of Canada, who went farther than us in Copa America. So it was a really good feeling, really good shit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, Team Canada apparently cheats in soccer, so there we go.
I was going to say, speaking of Canadian women's teams disappointing, talk about
well, there's actually proof that it's the men's side too. Potentially. This is like rough. There was apparently some complaints in Kansas City at Copa America. But yeah.
Damn.
Yeah, but I'm just gonna pretend it's not happening because this is not a soccer podcast. Hashtag cope. Yeah. So I don't know what else stood out to you about the Olympic tournament, and no talk about Team USA until the end.
Hey, I mean, shout out to the champ. They made it a little tougher on themselves than they needed to. Let me tell you, I've yelled at Steve Kerr through my TV a few times, as one does. But no, it was cool. They did what they had to do. Some players were a little bit better and more natural fits for it than others.
So much.
On Embiid. I know it sounds like I'm going to get on Embiid. I'm not going to get on Embiid because I think he kind of figured it out a little bit more toward the end. I think he was pretty good in the final. But I know everyone's been doing this lately. But I got to shout out Devin Booker. I think we were talking about offline a little bit about Kyle Kuzma being a little smooth brained with the whole like RFK and conspiracy theory shit that he's apparently gotten up on. But his tweet about, man, Team USA needs to find someone who's cool with just playing some defense and staying in the corner and hitting open shots, and Devin Booker saying, I'll do it, which the whole team has been making fun of nonstop, but just like quoting it to his face over and over. But he really was one of the guys for that team. He played the most minutes. He was the best plus minus on the team. Like Devin Booker turning into the super version of Bruce Bowen is not something that a lot of people had on their bingo cards, but when he puts his mind to it, he really goes out there and defends like he means it. And him picking up Francis point guards full court at the end of that game, that's what changed the game in the second half. That's what changed the game before that, too. Like, him applying pressure like that. Not a lot of superstars do full court defense.
Him playing that role, I think, also gave a lot of, like, cred to kind of just him as a superstar and being, like, actually, like, a pretty cool dude, not just some, like, number yet, like he had that reputation early in his career.
Yeah, people did not realize how bad some of those Phoenix rosters were. People were doing like the empty calories accusations at Devin Booker. Dog, he had like Dragan Bender in his starting lineup, man. Like who else was going to go get those buckets? Like, let's be completely honest, man. Like he had to chuck up shots. Like he had to have the ball way more than he necessarily needed to. He had to be the point guard and the leading scorer and this and that. Like,
it's true, and he also was like so young for a long. He's like a really young player. Like he's been in the league for like a decade, and he's like not even 30. Like he's so young. So I don't actually think that's entirely accurate, but still, like he's really young for how long he's been in the league. So like it took him a while, right? And yeah, like once the Suns got good, he's proven that he's like an incredible, winning kind of superstar. But just the fact that he was willing to not be that player at all, or just be someone completely different at the Olympics, is always really, was like really neat to watch. And I definitely said no Team USA talk till the end, and then he just blew right past that. So I guess we'll just keep.
Well, if you said the end, I thought that was now. I thought that was segueing to the USA talk.
Americans, man, just kidding. Happy to talk about them because honestly,
I misread the comment.
It's okay. It's all good. It's just funny. It was really interesting. It was an interesting tournament to watch. I'm sure the Lakers hated every single second of it because LeBron had to carry Team USA as well as he's going to have to carry their team. So I'm sure they were just watching through like their fingers like this the whole time.
For sure, missing 20 games this year. That man has got to be exhausted.
Yeah. No, he burnt out a lot to help them. I don't know. Embiid, he was fine by the end. I don't think he was winning them any games, but he also wasn't like losing them games. I think he learned that FIBA is not the same animal at all. He can't just grift his way to foul calls.
Eventually it just became, hey, if I got that 18-footer, I'm just going to take it now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he knows he can hit that all day. And once he figured out that, hey, instead of doing 4 dribbles and 2 spins and whatever and trying to look under somebody's arms and do all this shit and yell, like, hey, I'm just going to catch the ball. I'm going to take this 18-footer. Man, I'm going to make it. And that's when he became a serious contributor.
He really just simplified this game. Yeah, agreed. I really thought Serbia had them for a little while there, but I kind of always I really always had a feeling the U.S. would win. It's one of those things that until they lose, you kind of are like,
Yeah.
But, I mean, Jokic was out for blood, and
he was cooking.
But
when it got to lemon booty time, the other 3 players, besides Bogey and Jokic, the other 3 players weren't ready for it. Lemon booty time, the U.S. had a couple of guys who, we could complain about Steve Kerr all the time. There were some players who basically just went with the, hey, I'm going to go get this bucket offense.
Yeah.
They did the whole, the play sheet was just do his ass. Like, that's the whole play sheet. Kevin Durant was like, yeah, I'm just going to do 3 crossovers and stick a jumper in this guy's eye, and that's how they won the game.
Yeah.
It's funny because all this consternating we've done about oh, they got to play FIBA ball, they got to do this, they got to do that, which I've done a little bit of that too, I'll be honest. It really came down to just some of our guys can cook.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, I think the consternating about FIBA ball is like fair though, because for the most part in the tournament, there's a lot of the game that's different, and players who rely on foul grifting, like the Damian Lillards and Embiids of the world, do struggle at that level at first because you're not used to the fact that FIBA refs are like, oh no, guards can get hacked too. Like,
oh yeah.
You know, whereas like in the NBA, like the rules are so perimeter centric where like you can't touch anybody on the perimeter, but you can like, I mean, the scars
the shit out of a center.
Well, have you seen the scars Jokic has after games from just getting clawed on the post? Like, you know,
bleeds every night.
Literally, like, man has like permanent damage from playing against NBA posts. So it's like, it's different for sure. Like the officiating's a lot different. And the game is different for sure. But no, it was pretty cool. I mean, it's weird that it's Steph Curry's first time playing in the Olympics. He was great and kind of reminded us all why Steph Curry's Steph Curry.
That shot he hit against France, you know which one. I mean,
yeah.
That was one of those shots where there's no way to react to it other than, like, I started laughing out loud. Like, I had a good hearty chuckle. I don't think there's any other healthy way to respond to that. Like,
there's no other reaction you can have. Yeah, there's no other
It's
reaction.
like that Paul George, like, I don't care what anyone says it's a bad shot. For Steph, there is no bad shot.
No, it's true.
You just throw your hands up and you're like, damn, he did me again. Like, that's unfortunate. I hate to see it.
How do you feel about Anthony Edwards' tournament?
I thought it was pretty good. There's a couple of games where it got a little rough. I mean, there's a lot of just like, let me go get this mid-range pull-up real quick. But I mean, he's pretty good at like pressuring people defensively. He's willing to work out there. He was better in the group stage than he was in the knockout rounds, but yeah, he was pretty good. I'm not worried about him necessarily. Sometimes the shot don't go down, but I think he'll get more used to those big moments. And I think he'll become. I'm confident in him.
Do you like the idea of him being more of a lead dog on Team USA versus having to try and fit in next to like LeBron and KD and all them? Because I feel like at the World Cup, I mean, and America didn't medal, but like not like regardless of that, I don't think that really had anything to do with Anthony Edwards being the main guy. But yeah, like how do you feel about that going forward? I guess do you think he's better off in that kind of role versus having to be really quite deferential to, you know?
I think there's like two roles that really work for him. Either there's like the lead dog thing, which I think he has to grow into a little bit still.
Mm-hmm.
But then that like the role they had him in this tournament as like a scoring sixth man, I think he's awesome at that role. Mm-hmm. But I think the question is when some of these, like when the Durant, Curry, Braun, when they age out and he has to be a starter, what is his role going to look like? I think he'll probably end up being 1A, 1B with somebody. It's just a matter of who it's going to be. Is it going to be Booker? Is Booker going to be more of an on-ball guy for them next time? Is it going to be Tatum? You know, like who's going to be the other guy who's the late shot clock guy?
What do you think is actually the future point guard of this team? Because Edwards and Booker really aren't point guards, and I think FIBA really does help when you have like a real point guard, like. Because Steph Curry can be a real point guard. Like, you know, you have guys like Drew Holiday, which bring a base level.
LeBron. You don't need a point guard when you have
LeBron.
Exactly.
And he's kind of a special case. Like, players like him and Jokic and like, where their playmaking is at such a high level. Like, not to say that Booker or Edwards aren't good playmakers, but, like, they are not at that level. Even for as good as Booker is, he is not a LeBron, Jokic, Steph Curry kind of level playmaker. Right. And... neither is obviously Drew Holiday, but he brings a level of just steadiness as a point guard.
Mm-hmm.
Because Derek
wanted to be Halliburton.
Yeah.
And they wanted to be Halliburton, but I think when they played him in these last two tournaments, I think they found that defensively, other than like sneaking up and getting some steals on doubles and stuff like that,
nothing.
He's just not like that defensively. He's just not. And I think he's used to like an offensive system where he has the ball all the time, and there's just too much talent on USA's roster for him to be dominating the ball to the extent that he's getting 25 and 13 every game. Like, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, his best role or like his best skill is his passing, which I think can translate when you have other talent. But the challenge is you need the ball in your hands to do the passing. And Team USA has the wealth of talent that they can spread the ball handling duties out a little bit and get away with it, right? Like, it's not quite like an NBA team where like you need somebody who's going to study the pace and like have someone like you can get away with having a more ball dominant player, I think, because like yeah, it's eventually catches up to you in every league, and same in FIBA. But yeah, we have the ability with Team USA because it's literally like the Monstars that, you have to spread the ball around. It's not like an NBA team where you can build it around one star and then have a bunch of players who are happy to get open cuts and threes and whatever from a central point guard.
Yeah, there's too much talent to go Luka mode where everything is running through you every single play. There's just too much talent. And like some guys are going to take on lesser roles than they do on their home team, but they're not going to vanish into, they're not going to go PJ Tucker.
No.
You know what I mean? Like even Booker was still getting double-digit points a game.
Yeah.
With a diminished role, right? And so my thing is like, Halliburton would be perfect on like Australia or something, you know what I mean? But on the U.S., it's a little bit different, a little bit of a different fit. So I do wonder if we're going to see U.S. John Morant in the future. I know that's, the internet pipe dream that's been going around, but he's a really fascinating player because he is a better passer than I think people realize. Controls the tempo of the game, and he's not like, he'll spend a lot of time on the ball, but I do feel like there's like a different element to his game because his game is more predicated on getting to the basket than Tyrese's game is.
This is true.
Wants to shoot those like janky 28-footers. Sorry, I'm just being like a Pacers hater right now. But Ja Morant will collapse the entire paint, and if you don't collapse on him, he will jam it on your head. Also, if you collapse on him, he may still jam it on your head. And it just puts a different type of pressure. And I think me, as a basketball fan, I'm predisposed to liking players who attack the rim because of just how much it changes what the other team has to do defensively. And so I'm like, I would love to see Ja on Team USA. I know he's not the shooter from the outside that people tend to gravitate toward in like a FIBA setting or whatever, but that would be so fun.
Ja would be fun. I just wonder if, because he does have to be on the ball quite a lot. Because his shooting isn't what Tyrese's is, he can't theoretically move off the ball, at least as a shooter.
Right.
Comparatively, and his defense certainly is not better. So that's, I don't necessarily know that like you're, in that sense, like losing or missing. Like, I don't know. I do feel like there's a bit of an element of like having, if you're going to have a player like that have to play off ball more because you have other lead dogs on the team. But I do think Ja maybe, I think you're right. Like his ability to collapse the paint and get to the rim probably does add something that Tyrese doesn't. I guess it's just a trade-off, right? But at the end of the day, I
think it's kind of a dilemma in general. Like when you look at like the best American point guards who weren't already on that team, it's I guess who weren't like key players on that team. You got Tyrese, who has not a particularly good defender. Ja Morant, not a particularly good defender. Jalen Brunson, not a particularly good defender. You know what I mean? There's not really an awesome two-way guy. So you got to give and take with whoever you pick.
I think I actually would rather see Brunson in some ways than even a Ja, just because I do think his game fits better with having a player like Anthony Edwards or something. Like I think he's a lot easier to move off the ball because he's already done that, first of all. So he played with a player like Luka in the NBA.
Yeah, with Luka, yeah.
Yeah, so he knows how to play off ball and still cook. But he also can be the point guard. He's a very good point guard, right? So I feel like Brunson actually would be a better fit for me personally. And like, it's not because I'm trying to like slander Ja or Tyrese even, because I don't really have any issue. Like, I don't care. Like, they're both really good players, and Ja is super exciting. I love watching him play. I really hope he has managed to get his shit together, just because it sucks seeing a player like derail, something pretty promising because he's just being an idiot. So I'm hoping that he has figured that out a little bit. Like I love watching him play. So it's not really like any disrespect to them, but I just think that there's something about Brunson's game that I think just sort of fits better. Plus, like he's not the best defender, but I do think he's at least the most physical between the three of those guys.
Yeah, he's built. He's a sturdy boy. He got that like running back build. It's kind of interesting because like he's probably the least advanced passer of the three of them, but he has the most, I think, scoring balance between being able to hit you from the outside and bully his way to the rim. I think like Tyrese, sharpshooter from outside, he can get to the rim a little bit. Ja
kind of the other way around.
Can kind of shoot from the outside a little bit. Brunson is probably the one guy who's the real 3-level scorer, right?
Yeah,
they might not even need a point guard to score. So I don't.
Well, and even if Brunson's passing isn't as good, as Tyrese or Ja, I also feel like Brunson's passing is like more like not stat. I don't want to say the other guys are stat chasers because they're not, but it's a bit more like it feels more organic. I feel like he gets a lot more like hockey assists and like just gets the ball moving in a different way, if that makes sense. Like Ant, because like Ant is leveling up as a passer for sure, whereas like Brunson's skill as a passer is kind of in that connector kind of role as well. And I think some of that again comes from playing with a player like Luka for a long time, where like you don't have to be the number one passer on the team, but you need to keep things moving and be good enough to kind of get those secondary actions. And when you're playing with a team as talented as Team USA, you don't necessarily need like an A-plus passer as your point guard. You just need someone who's going to like fill those gaps and keep the ball moving because there's a lot of mouths to feed, you know? So like assist numbers don't necessarily have to correlate to like your ability to actually fit that sort of role. And because like you said, he's a good enough 3-point shooter. He can play off the ball in that sense, but he'll also pump and drive and he'll get in the paint and get like a secondary action moving. And I think that will help because you do also then have players like Ant and who can ISO, and sometimes you just need good balance to that. So I feel like Brunson's ability to get a team into an offense is also kind of maybe
I think he's a stronger ball handler than Halliburton is too.
Yeah, I would agree. Like Ja, I think he's obviously a very good ball handler, but sometimes I don't know. I guess it's probably just a matter of not watching him play in a long time. It's hard to envision him getting, like I just can't picture his getting the offense in motion kind of thing, his actual like true point guard skills, because he is definitely a big scorer, right? Like he'll just take it.
I think like Ja as the true point, because I remember in college he was that guy, and in the pros I remember being surprised by how much scoring he was capable of doing. Like I didn't know he was going to be that kind of scorer. Like I never imagined Ja being. I thought he'd be like a 2010 guy when he came into the league. I had no idea he'd be like a 27 and 8 guy. You know what I mean? I had no idea he had that much offensive juice. Like, I think maybe he was even surprised. Like, I don't know.
He did translate, like, immediately. I guess we'll see how the Grizzlies season goes.
Yeah, I wanted the Knicks to draft him so bad that year. I was praying for the number 2 pick.
Yeah, that would have been really sick. He would have fit well in New York.
He might have fit too well, man. That Instagram Live, be calling someone like the Green Goblin mask.
Yeah. I struggle with him because it's like it seems like he's just trying to find this identity that's like, he's trying to find an identity, and the one he chose just doesn't fit him, and it has gotten him into trouble. And it's like, it's okay to not have to be the most gangster dude out there. I'm sorry, bro. Not everyone's a gangster, and you can just sort of live with that. Being kind of like, being kind of the wholesome presence he was at the beginning isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, I hope he'll figure it out.
I hope so too.
Well, I'll do.
He seems like a really good dude. Like his heart's in the right place and things like that. He just, he's really young, and like, it doesn't necessarily sound like his support system is the most like on track either. So, there's a lot of things to kind of figure out, but I'm sure they'll all figure it out. I have faith in that. And I have faith in like the Grizzlies are going to do everything they can to help him because like he is their one true, their son, right? They have to orbit around him. So they're going to do what they can to keep him on track, I think. And I think he'll figure it out. He's so young. He'll grow up. He'll be fine.
Wait, now that we've talked about the other 2 top 3 players from that draft, about Zion, I see him looking svelte. You know what I mean?
Do you ever think he's going to play for Team USA?
That's why I wanted to talk about him, because like, man, I mean, gotta be a top 5 talent in the American pool. He's such an interesting player.
Has he ever played for Team USA at any level?
If he has, it had to have been like U15 or something, because I've never seen him put on a US shirt. I want to look it up later, but I'm certainly not senior level, and I'm really curious. Like, he's such a specific player that I wonder what that fit would look like, because we've seen him like sky through the air and like destroy shots, but he's not tall, so he's not really a traditional like rim protector type. He could be like a Charles Barkley-ish type of dude, potentially. But then what kind of players do you put next to a Charles Barkley in this era, where spacing is king and teams are using all these zone concepts, and, France has, 2 7'9" wingspan dudes in the paint doing this every play. It's really interesting. I really don't know what to do with Zion. I would love to see him play for Team USA. I would love to see Ja throwing alley-oops to Zion. That would be beautiful. I would put a poster of that above my bed. But like, I have no idea. I hope he gets a chance, and I'd like to see him have a great season this year. I'd like to see him have a healthy season. I don't care if he scores 30 points a game. I just love to see him play 75, 80 games.
Same. So from a quick cursory research, he's never played for Team USA at any level. So I feel like, unfortunately, that will put him at a bit of a disadvantage in terms of just selection, just because I feel like they're always going to prioritize players, at least to some extent, who've been loyal to the program. Although it also doesn't necessarily feel that, I don't know. Team USA is kind of weird in terms of their scouting, because it seems like Grant Hill has this, they used to have this whole idea of wanting commitment and stuff, and then all of a sudden just doesn't seem to matter to some extent. So that's a bit weird.
It's like when it's convenient for them, they want to do the commitment thing, but then if somebody wants to show up for the first time and at like age 36 and they're really good, we'll let them do it. So which I mean, it's like 2008 talk where they were like, I remember, I want to say, so 04 was, no, 06 when we lost at the, no, 04 we lost in the Olympics, 06 went to the Worlds and kind of shit the bed. And they were like, we want commitment. And they made dudes basically commit to the next few years. And they went to like the actual like America's like qualifying shit with NBA players. Even now we send G League guys and college dudes to that. You know what I mean? They went to like the America's tournament with legit NBA players and crushed everybody. And they made it like a whole thing for an entire qualifying cycle. They're like, we're going to have players committed to the program. It's going to be a long-term thing. And then once they won in 08, they were like, show up when you show up. And so I feel like the commitment thing is just one of those things they try to pay lip service to, but I think they know they can't lock these guys in like that. And,
well, it's hard, yeah.
The best players are going to show up when they show up. If you're one of the top 5, you'll show up when you show up. I think if you're outside of the top 5, maybe the level of commitment will matter. But like if you're projected to start, you can just pull up if you're that good.
Yeah, that's fair. It's just such a like different problem than every other country has.
Yeah.
But I guess that's enough about Team USA. They get enough talk, and we'll talk about these players for the next 10 months. So I guess, quickly we can do Team USA for the women. How did you feel about that tournament? I mean, obviously Asia just continued to show her dominance and why she is the queen and why she should win MVP again this year.
Incredible. She's incredible. When it came down to crunch time in the finals, it was, hey, get the ball to Asia. Kalia Copper was also big. Let's not forget about her. Go Mercury. Kalia Copper.
Really right.
Easy in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
One of the best slashers in the world. Her tenacity in getting to the basket. She looks a little tired coming back now to the W after the Olympics, which is understandable. Yeah. But her ability to just break a defense open, get to the basket, and finish is I don't know if I would say second to none, but second to very, very fucking few. And her and Asia, I mean, you get Asia the ball at like 15, 18 feet. It's a bucket.
Totally. No, totally.
You double her or it's a bucket. Like, I don't know what you're going to do about it. Defense doesn't know what they're going to do about it. Asia doesn't know what they're going to do about it.
I felt like the women's team was a lot less vulnerable than the men's. The women, I never really had any... I had a feeling they were just going to roll for the field like they did. I mean, they were challenged. I mean, the French really, I think, put the fear of God in them in the final game for a little while. But they, figured it out because they're Team USA and they're amazing. So feels unfair to, not talk about them more. But, I mean, at the same time, it's like, what else can you say? Because they're just truly spectacular. Cheryl Reeve knows how to coach. She knows how to coach a good game. She respects the shit out of Asia Wilson. You can tell because she triple teams her when they played. The Mercury and Lynx played last night, and Cheryl Reeve is like, here, you can have 3 players on Asia.
I feel the way about U.S. women's basketball in the way that I used to feel about U.S. women's soccer before, the last handful of years, where it was hard to watch, when the Olympics are there or, the World Cup, I'm watching, right?
Mm-hmm.
Other competitions outside of that, it's hard. It's sometimes hard to tune in because the level of dominance is so high that games feel inevitable. When they're playing, a regional game, if U.S. women's soccer was playing against another CONCACAF team like Costa Rica or Jamaica or whatever, I was like, it's 6-0.
What are we doing here?
What are we doing here? Yeah, or U.S. women's basketball. Okay, you see a team that's kind of on the rise, like a Mexico. It's we're still gonna beat them by 40.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not.
I used to feel that way about Canada women's hockey, where it was just like, aside from playing the U.S., like, okay.
Even now, kind of, let's be honest. Like,
no, it's
there's
still
a few countries that have gotten better, but still,
there's
a reason they play a 7-game series against the United States every year.
Yeah. Outside of playing,
make up a playoff.
Yeah, outside of playing the U.S. and like maybe Sweden or Finland, it's like, for the most part, you're winning by at least 5 goals. So what's the point? Yeah, no, and it's hard because I feel like when I watch the Olympics or I'm watching for storylines in international like basketball, I have like Team USA in like its own tier of storyline. Like I'm like, cool, whatever. Like I almost don't even care. It's like there's them and then there's the rest of the tournament because we already know who's winning gold. I'm way more interested in who's winning silver and bronze because we already know who's winning gold. And good for them. Like it's not to diminish their talent. It's just that it's also like not interesting, especially because I'm not an American. So it's like
the players we left off.
Yeah. Right? Like I'm not really crazy. I'm a known non-Sabrina fan, but I mean she would have been great for Team USA. Like there's tons of players who easily I mean the fact that Alyssa Thomas is like
Aretha Walla didn't play, like Joan Clark didn't play, like I mean the players that we left off alone, as we saw in the WNBA All-Star game, it was USA versus the All-Star team. Cooking. And it's basically the All-Star team is just like a second. It's like Team USA B team is still better than like every other team's best. Like their B team might lose to a France, but like might, right. And it would still take one country though,
and it would take everything breaking France's way for that to happen. Like you need Marine Johannes to go on a fucking heater, and which she is more than capable of doing.
Like we've reached the point where we know the B team is fallible and like can lose and has lost.
Yeah.
That looks like, because we've seen it happen. We know when they go to the Worlds with the B team or the C team that they're probably not going to get the gold. With the women's, honestly, they could send the B team out there, and the bet would be them against the field.
No, it's true. No, for sure. Like I never for one moment thought anybody other than Team USA was going to win.
That one scare aside, I mean, was every game like 20-plus point victory? Like,
right.
Every single game?
Yeah, something like that. But, man, yeah, I don't know. It's tough because I want to give the players their flowers, but I'm also like, it wasn't really surprising or interesting how good they were. What was more interesting to me?
Compelling.
No, it was more interesting to me that Nigeria won. Like the Nigerian women's team did so well.
They got a lot of talent.
That even their French team, like the French women's team, I don't think, like, they have a lot of clear, very good talent, but they don't have that, like, Wembanyama kind of, like, star right now that's driving at least, like, the American, like, follower. But, like, I think that they're going to have a bunch of players coming into the W in the next few years that are going to be, like...
A lot of diaspora players, too. A lot of diaspora players.
Yeah.
They're going to be interested in joining Nigeria. So that's what happened with the men's, but it wasn't, like, the best of them.
Oh, yeah.
The women's, I think some of the best, like, diaspora players might be joining the women's team.
100%.
Very interesting to watch.
Sorry, I was talking about France, but cross communication there. Yeah, France.
Oh, sorry, I was talking about Nigeria.
But you're right about Nigeria. I think they have a lot of diaspora players that are going to start playing for them, and then I think that they're on the rise. But then, with France, like their women's side, I think they're going to have a lot of players coming over, much like the NBA is seeing right now. I think there's going to be a lot of women's players coming over in the next 2 years. I mean, a few of their rights have already been drafted, but you can just, like, that team was so talented. And I mean, obviously, we've gotten a taste of what Marine Johannes can do in the W, and she's amazing in FIBA. The real MJ. But no, she's awesome. But my favorite one of my favorite stories, though, I guess, of the Olympics in general was South Sudan. Bright stars forever.
Big shout out to Lil Dang, by the way.
Lil Dang, yeah.
Chicago icon.
Lil Dang has done so much. I guess hopefully everyone's familiar with what happened, but Lil Dang essentially is privately funded South Sudan's men's national basketball team, and they won a game in the group play. They won I think it was Africa's first ever like win at the Olympics. Essentially, they were the first African.
They pushed the U.S. in one of the
qualifiers. Yep. They have the
youngest country in the world, right? Youngest country in the world?
Yeah, they're the youngest country in the world. They have one of the top NBA prospects right now. He's going to Duke.
No.
He didn't play a ton in the tournament, but he got a taste of it, and you kind of, everything like that is so big for a player like him. So super happy for him. Happy for, I don't know, South Sydney's people everywhere. My partner's one of those people, and it's just like, it's such a strong culture and vibrant culture, and just an unfortunate like diaspora spread around that, want to go back and I just like they want to like support their homeland. And it's nice to see people like Lul Deng and, stepping up to try and help do that. And unfortunately, South Sudan's engulfed in another conflict, as well as Sudan in general. So this Olympics, I think, meant even more to a lot of people. So they were a really cool story. But I mean, even more than that, they showed like it's not just like a Jamaican bobsled team kind of fun story. Like they're actually going to be a very good program going forward. Especially, right? Right. And like they just showed like what... Also kind of something that's like just bigger than basketball, and like how like they didn't really have any true star players. I mean, they had a bunch of guys who, had a cup of coffee in the NBA. So,
Gabriel and guys like that.
JT Thor, whatever. Players are none of them who are like big stars in the NBA, but just what playing, people always talk about those players that turn into Michael Jordan when they start playing for their country. And it's like, yeah, they're part of the reason for that, I think, is that for them it is really bigger than basketball, right? Especially in the case of South Sudan, where it's like there's just so much like love and like passion behind that of like motivation. The motivations are different than just like you want to win, not just because you're competitive, but like there's something else firing that too, right? It means so much. And that I think does like really impact players more than anyone ever wants to admit. So they were super cool to watch play. I'm excited to see their future for sure.
Same.
Yeah.
Look forward to seeing them in the next Olympics.
The Bright Stars have a bright future, but they'll be really cool. Obviously, France, we chose a French wine just to talk about those cheese-eating surrender monkeys. Just kidding.
Wow. I thought Canadians liked France.
No. There was a war that, kicked them out. And then a whole lot of tension.
A few of those, haven't they? They've been
in a few of those, and there's a whole lot of tension between the French and the non-French at times. So, yes, you're sadly mistaken.
Shout out to Haiti, the oldest democracy in the Western Hemisphere.
Yeah, no.
Republic in the country. Shout out to Haiti.
Shout out Haiti. We like Haiti. Quebec?
I haven't been yet. I do want to go.
Just kidding. I won't be too harsh on my Quebec slander. The one time I did go to Quebec, it was quite nice. But that's
they invented poutine, and I support that.
You know what? I also support that. And tortilla. Tortilla is pretty sick. And you know what? Maple syrup. Everyone loves that shit. So
we got from Vermont. We good. We don't need that.
Nah, Vermont maple syrup sounds good.
Poutine is so unhealthy. I'm amazed that Americans didn't invent it. Like, it feels like something that should have been on.
It feels like the most American thing ever, but there's a few French Canadian delicacies that are like that. Tortilla is also
cheese curds and fucking gravy. Like, I don't know how did somebody in Wisconsin not invent that.
I was gonna say the cheese curd thing is very like specific to. Feels very specific to Canada or like Wisconsin.
Yeah. As a snack, dude, they just eat cheese curds.
Oh, they're so good though. They're like the best snack.
They're the best. They're squeaky.
So good. I could focus on cheese curds right now with this wine.
I almost said poutine today, but I restrained myself.
I think I'm gonna bring some cheese on the podcast next time. A little wine and cheese. It is wine and dine. Wine and dine. Yeah, no. The French were really that fun segue. The French were really good. They were really good. They seemed shaky at the beginning of the tournament, and then like the men's side at least, and then they turned it on. And the Wemby Gobert pairing was fascinating.
Yeah, they abandoned it after a while.
French guards, I think, need some work still, but they're all clearly on the rise. Busele's coming back. They really pushed the U.S. I was really impressed. I mean, again, Evan Fournier is one of those, becomes Michael Jordan when he plays for France.
Man, I swear he shoots 300% from the field when he puts a French jersey on. Like, it just really feels that way. But man, French basketball legend for sure. Also, Nick's legend. Shout out. What's Nick always in there?
Yeah, I don't like Evan Fournier at all. He drives me crazy. I feel like Nick Batum.
Fashion icon too, by the way. Shout out to Evan Fournier's Instagram. The man is dripped out all the time.
Fair enough. That's interesting. I think the future of French basketball is bright. It's a lot of incoming talent from France, so I guess we should all be prepared for the French invasion. It seems like another wave after the Tony Parker era. Now there's another wave, so...
It's the opposite of what usually happens to the French, but...
Yeah. They're not usually the invader, that's for sure. They're usually
not in a while.
Quite the opposite.
Been a few centuries.
Yeah. Been a few centuries, so... It's like trying to be nice about France is apparently really hard, except for the wine's really good, so like... French wine, superior. But other than that, like...
This bottle is so good. I've been fucking this thing up.
Oh, and it's like, I don't know, I love it. It's such a good...
All the cheeses are top notch too. Like, Brie is fucking incredible.
I know. Gruyere, fucking... chèvre, I love goat cheese.
What they did with rabbit is...
Yeah. They do good things with rabbit, for sure.
So,
Well, I guess we should transition to the W now that I guess first, before we do that, any final Olympics thoughts, things you're excited about, like, that happened or are going to happen in the future with certain teams, either men's or women's? Anything you want to shout out in particular?
I just want to say that, for certain North American countries that didn't get a medal in this Olympics, there's brighter days ahead. It gets better, I promise.
It's a troll move.
We'll see y'all in hockey. We're the reigning world juniors champions, so I just want to point that out.
Yeah. Just rubbing salt in that wound. I love it. Fair enough. Well, yeah, I don't know. I think overall the quality of the basketball was really good. It was a really fun tournament. I didn't get to watch it as much as I wanted, just time zones and jobs. But from what I saw from the highlights, it looked really cool. And I'm super happy for Serbia getting bronze in the men's. Boy Jokic got his medal.
Yep.
Got a silver in it.
They celebrated too. They were very proud.
He got a silver and a bronze, and then he threw an alley-oop to himself off the backboard in today's Goran Dragic retirement game. So, yeah, Jokic is doing good. I'm excited to see what kind of havoc he's going to wreak on the league. But kind of like we mentioned earlier, the fatigue thing is always fascinating. But I think there's no other league where then it really is bigger than in the WNBA, which, aside from my shitty earlier transition, let's transition properly now. Back to the W. Like you said, Ka was looking a little gassed coming back. And I think that's honestly a fair assessment. I mean, she played overseas too, so she has been playing for a while. I think that's kind of the most underrated or like under-considered part of women's basketball is just how many games these women have played in the last, for a lot of them. And Julie Van Loo.
Condensed season.
Yeah, Julie Van Loo from the Washington Mystics and Team Belgium. She made a tweet, I don't know, like a week ago maybe, just saying, like, shout out to everybody who played in the Olympics and is now back playing in the W. Like, it's been really hard just managing it physically, mentally, emotionally. So, like, you're all doing great. Like, kind of just like an encouragement. And because there were a lot of players who played in the Olympics, even if not just for Team USA. I mean, Kia Nurse, Leah Edwards, Gessa Chan was not playing in the W this year. They all played. A lot of the Australians played, obviously. Sammy Whitcomb, Ezzy.
Yeah, we had an injury, unfortunately, in Australia during the Olympics, versus
Becca.
She's had a bit of a rough season with health, but I mean, like, as a Mercury fan too, like, just the fact that we're talking about the scheduling. Phoenix Mercury, obviously everyone had the Olympic break, the actual teams, but then they sent their three best players to the Olympics: Janice Rossi, Kalia Copper, Brittany Griner. They all played on the U.S. team. The first thing they get when they come back is a back-to-back.
Right.
Both away games, both in different cities. I mean, that's just like, that's some tired legs.
Yep.
Some tired legs. Played in Chicago and Indiana back-to-back nights. 2 days later, they're playing in Phoenix. And then 3 days later, they're in Atlanta for 2 straight games. Like, it is them some miles on them legs.
Well, they play again here tonight, which we're recording on Saturday. So they play here in about an hour and a bit. Again, I think.
The Mercs? No, they played last night.
Oh, sorry. You're right. They did. There's 2 games tonight.
Narrow win.
Yeah.
That was a tough one.
No, that's definitely going to be tough. I mean, the Mercury also were hard to figure out because their effort versus certain teams, and by certain teams, I mean the Chicago Sky, is a lot different than the effort that they put out against other teams. And as a fan of the Chicago Sky, it's upsetting. Understandable, yet upsetting. So yeah, I don't know. It's
flashbacks from the finals. And Kelly Copper showing up in her old Chicago Sky jersey, which was a big move.
That was some big girl shit. That was not nice, but I respected and loved Ka for it. Yeah, no, it's been interesting watching the W since the Olympic break. I do feel like players who didn't play in the Olympics probably have a little more life to them. I think you're starting to see that grind really play out in Las Vegas. Both from just like a players are tired perspective from in the Olympics, but also just 2 straight years of winning back to back, the kind of cost that's taken. Something's not right in Vegas. The vibes are not good. I mean, the Derek Hamby lawsuit is certainly, I'm sure, not helping as far as distractions go. Which I think we can talk about that another time a little bit more in depth. I don't want to just like kind of gloss over it or anything, because it is a really important moment in the league, and I would like to talk about it more at length. But I do think that just regardless of regardless of what everyone's feeling about that particular lawsuit, that's certainly distracting, and it's certainly, she has some valid points, and so I think there's a lot going on in Ace's land, and on top of that, trying to win a 3rd straight title is just a lot. So something's not right there. I feel like, unfortunately, Asia and at times Jackie are pretty much just carrying that squad right now.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of legs that's running on E right now for sure. But I'm excited. I mean, my team's got they've won 3 of the 5 since they retired. Like, I don't feel too bad about it. It's about the pace we were at before. So we'll be hanging in there. We're hanging in there.
The Storm will be happy that they're getting Gabby Williams back after they just got annihilated by Indiana, who apparently took that Olympic break and really benefited hard.
In the gym, clearly.
Yeah. Well, and everybody cried about like Caitlin not being at the Olympics, but honestly, I think it was the best thing that happened to her.
She's been playing nonstop. The college season ends and WNBA starts pretty much immediately after.
And then also
on the first break she's had.
And then on top of that, she's just been, the one, ultimately, like the biggest star, right? There's been so much attention and everything on her that's also exhausting and taxing. So having a few weeks where she's not like the main story, I'm sure it was quite nice. So I'm glad that they've taken that and run with it. And I think that like everybody in Indiana, from the coaching staff down to the players, they all needed that break. Their schedule was fucked to start the beginning of the year, quite frankly.
It was like that cash cow so bad. They had her playing like damn near every day. But they tough start. They figured it out a little bit. Won 6 of the last 10. They're 3rd in the East.
Yeah, no, Indiana's got something going there. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Kelsey Mitchell come free agency, but again, we'll kind of have that conversation closer too. But her comments the last couple of weeks have been very illuminating.
She wants to be a free agent. That's what it sounds like.
Yes, she was not trying to hide. She did not hide that very well. Which, you know what? Honestly, it's a fair point. She may end up coming back to Indiana. I mean, who knows? I think the more that her and Caitlin Clark have figured out their chemistry a little bit, then, maybe she'll be like, hey, this is someone I want to play with. And maybe she won't. That's up to Kelsey Mitchell, and she kind of deserves the right to be a free agent if she wants to be. I am curious what her market would be, because she gives me Devin Booker vibes in a sense, where she was always just an electric scorer on a bad team for a long time. And now the Fever are starting to actually win, and she's been part of that. So credit to her. Like, she's been a huge part of that winning. But I'm curious to see kind of what the market for her would be like. Just, I don't know. I'm not trying to like indicate there's any slights against Kelsey Mitchell, and I don't have any. I'm just legitimately curious, like, what her market would be and what.
She's pretty efficient too.
What people, yeah, right? Like, just, what I mean, though? I don't know how the league feels about her, because she's played on a bottom dweller for so long, and she's a very good scorer. Everyone knows that, an efficient scorer. But now she's starting to play on a team that matters. So I feel like it's a good year to be becoming a free agent, because she's going to have some big games playing with Caitlin and Aaliyah. And I hope to be honest, I hope she stays. I actually think she's pretty solid there next to them. I think she's a great third option, but she also may want to accelerate things a little bit because she's been around a few more years. So the Fever will remain interesting for a while. But yeah, the Storm on the other side of that equation, getting murdered by the Fever. They they've overall been really good this year, but I think getting Gabby Williams back will help pretty significantly. She's a talent. Even if she doesn't play a ton, she'll be helpful. I haven't watched a lot of Storm games, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if you have.
Not really. They're a weird team. They're 18-10. They're second in the West. I feel like they're really good, but they haven't really felt like
they've existed
a championship threat. They haven't really been. Maybe it's just lack of attention, but they haven't really felt like a championship threat in the way you would expect for a team.
I think
a record like that.
I think maybe the beginning was just so rocky that people kind of were like, "Ooh, okay," and stepped back, and maybe just haven't come back to them. I think they were always going to take a little time to sort of figure their shit out because they had a bunch of new free agent acquisitions. Like, it was a pretty new team. So really, because aside from Jewel and Ezzy and even like Sammy, like a lot of they had, two new really big starters in with Sky and NECA, right? So it was always going to take a little bit of time. I'm curious by how little Nika's played. I expected a little bit more run for Nika Mule, but I guess maybe the visa issues just really set her back. I'm not sure.
2 minutes a game, 13 games played out of 28. She hasn't gotten a chance to really get a rhythm with the team, or maybe they just feel like the rotation they got now is good enough. They don't need to break her in, but I think she'll get a chance before long, though. I think next season we might see her really become a main player.
I would agree. I don't think all hope is lost by any means. I think she's obviously a very valuable player that they're not gonna a valuable prospect that they're not just gonna punt on. So I think that she'll have an opportunity, but she's never going to be a starter, obviously, playing behind Sky and, they already have a very good point guard. So it'll take some time. But I was just...
I've seen her play before, for sure.
Yeah. I was just curious about... It's just been interesting to see how little she's managed to get on the court for them. Some interesting trades went down, though, since the Olympics ended. Maisha Hines-Allen, the Mystics sent her to Minnesota, and they... this Phoenix Mercury sent Shug Sutton to Washington.
Tough. I know she wasn't as effective this year as she has been for us, but she's such a cool player.
I love Shug Sutton.
Person to root for.
Yeah, I love her.
That was a little tough.
Yeah, I adore her. I'm curious to see how she fits in Washington. Maisha Hines-Allen, I think, will be a really nice fit in Minnesota. I really like Maisha. Go Cardinals, Louisville alumni. So I'm excited about that. But I'm curious if this opens up now more minutes for Emily Engsler in Washington. I know that they got some draft picks for Maisha. They probably should have moved off of her last year, to be honest. But they still got a decent return. The Mystics remain interesting. The Elena Deladon situation is unresolved, and I don't know. I'm not sure what to feel about the Mystics. They're kind of just there. Other than they look a lot better when Aaliyah Edwards and Shakira Austin are on the floor. They look better when those two are on the floor. But I haven't watched a ton of Mystics games either as a result of them being mostly...
they're 7-22. I understand why you're not watching too many games.
They're not good. Yeah, they're not really worth watching. But this guy have been very fun as well. Obviously, my homerism. They're still chugging along. There's been some good Dana games, which I'm always happy about. Angel Reese is continuing to create her empire, which we stand. Camilla is looking...
the Reese's Pieces sponsorship?
Yeah.
Check it out.
And then accordingly, there's a lot of mess on Twitter between LSU and South Carolina fans. It's been interesting. Yeah, always. The SEC rivalries, man. They're legit. Camilla... I love Camilla. She is definitely looking like a rookie at times, but she is also showing all of the promise in the world, and she's going to be just fine. So I have no real problem with that. Kennedy Carter looked like she was waiting for Marina Mabry to come back and try and come at the paint so she whipped her ass. That was pretty funny. There was not a lot of love lost there, so that was funny to watch. But Kennedy Carter has absolutely revived her career thus far in Chicago, so as much as the Chicago Sky can be very frustrating to watch in terms of just not a lot of consistency, at one moment they look like they're ahead of schedule. Other moments they're like, oh yeah, no, this is the young rebuilding team we expected. So it's been a lot, but I still think at the end of the day they're ahead of schedule, and I'm quite happy with their performance at the end of the day. So pretty pumped about that. I think Teresa Witherspoon's been the coach we've needed.
Yeah, I think they like her, so I think the players like her more.
Yeah. I think she's perfect. The Chicago Sky also announcing they're not an entirely poverty franchise by building a practice facility. So look at them go, trying to get
Love to
with
see
the rest
it.
of the league. Yeah, you love to see it, indeed. I dragged them, but at the end of the day, this is forward progress for sure. So, I don't know. I'm excited for the stretch run of the W for sure. I'm curious to see if Indiana can hold on to a top seed in the West, I guess they're in. They're in the West?
Indiana, they are in the East.
Sorry, East. Yeah, they would be in the East. The W conferences are weird because they also don't matter.
Yeah, they're just there at this point as a
Yeah.
decoration, I guess.
It's like, whose line is it anyway? Everything is made up and the points don't matter. It's how it feels sometimes. Connecticut continues to roll along. They're going to be, once again, they're just that team that I don't care about anything until the playoffs.
Yeah, it just feels like, I believe we want to see it from people at this point.
Yeah, 100%. Put up or shut up. But hey, they sold out TD Garden in Boston, so that was really cool. The WNBA did absolutely nothing to promote that, which was unsurprising yet not disappointing. It was still, it was not surprising yet still disappointing. It's the first time a women's pro basketball game's been played in Boston, and they did nothing, absolutely nothing. So, DNA Carrington made sure that they heard about that during her press conference, which big respect to that because, yeah, tough. But I think overall I'm pretty excited about the stretch run. The Aces are looking a lot shakier as title contenders than I expected. So I think this last part of the season is going to feel, and it's crazy because the last part of the season actually, like there's still a bit of time left, but it feels like it's been the longest season ever because everything's been so condensed. It's been a very strange season overall. Scheduling, and as a fan, I feel like I've watched less games than I wanted to. And when games have been on when I've wanted to watch, they haven't been on, or vice versa. It's been very strange. It's been a really weird season, but a good one. New York's a weird team because they're on top of the league, and yet I just haven't paid attention or cared very much. And I feel like that's kind of been the case. They've just been quietly rolling along and steamrolling people. Yeah, Stewie's releasing ugly shoes.
God, they're so hideous.
The transphobe twos.
I mean, I guess the aesthetic matches the concept, right? Like it's like,
I mean,
deserve, I guess, but yeah,
I guess.
Man, they are not. I would not be wearing those. I don't think there's a single outfit I have that is ugly enough to warrant putting those on my feet.
Like gray is a choice.
They look a little drab.
And I mean, doing a collaboration with an author who's actively being sued for being a transphobic monster is also a choice. So, not
I feel like
great
you
timing.
had to know. You had to know.
Well, and it's not like J.K. Rowling's transphobia is a new thing. Like, it's not like they can claim.
Hasn't been on the news.
Yeah, obviously these shoes have been in the works for a while because no shoe ever just comes out in a vacuum. Obviously, they've been in the works, I'm sure, for a couple of years, but she's been like this for at least much more than 5 years. So we've known who J.K. Rowling is for quite some time. So it's kind of not even this most recent controversy, which the timing of it is hilarious that they're releasing these now. But it's not like it's an excuse because they've known for a long time. So interesting choice for sure. Kind of hope Stewie says something about it. I'm sure she won't, but hopefully she does. Because it's not a great look of solidarity. And they're also just not a great look as far as shoes go because they're fucking ugly.
No,
I just don't want to look at them.
Visually a bad look.
Just visually, I don't want to see that on the court.
Yeah, I heard a little bit.
What's not a bad look is this wine, though. It was really delicious.
Hey, I'm making some progress on this bottle. This might not last longer than another day.
Oh, I'm for sure more than 3/4 of the way through mine.
Should we wrap up the
I guess. I think that's about all. So, I mean, I guess what to expect going forward. We're not newsbreakers. We're really just fans. We're gonna be talking about what we want every 2 weeks. So we're gonna miss things. That's just how it's gonna go. So we're not your news podcast. Please don't look to us for that.
When I'm doing live score updates during the pod, we're not going to give you scoops. Let's to talk about what we find compelling about the sport. Sometimes it's the actual game, sometimes it's the culture, sometimes it's the stories around it. Sometimes it's just the characters, you know what I mean? It's
There's a lot of characters.
it's the world's greatest soap opera, you know?
No, it's true. It's true. Especially the WNBA. It's like, come for the basketball, stay for the lesbian drama. Like, it's amazing. No, there's always so much going on, and there's so many fun storylines. So, and also just so many fun, like, I don't know, little threads to pull on around basketball, like the culture, like you said. So I'm excited about that.
If you think blocking your ex is satisfying, wait till you block your ex's shot on national television. That is
right,
man.
I know. Yeah,
Catharsis.
You wanna do something special with your partner? Do it like on the basketball court, and both end up in the record books because you passed. You know, you're the one about like you passed. You were the assist to the shot that launched your fiance into the top 5 in scoring historically. So, they're setting the bar for the rest of us for sure in terms of ways to
be petty.
Yeah, ways to be petty, or ways to like really do something special for your loved one. But sorry to my partner, I'm never going to be able to do that. We're never going to be in the WNBA history books together.
I thought you were just going to say you can't block a shot.
No, I can. I don't know. I might not be able to. I have 30-year-old white girl vertical. It's not super high.
Damn.
I haven't trained. I don't like doing box jumps, so I'm not really training my vertical right now.
Fair.
Yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, there'll be a new wine with every new topic every week, or every other week, I guess. And hope everyone likes the debut. But follow us we're on all the social medias, so follow us there and for updates.
Wine and Dime Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Threads. Probably something else I haven't thought about.
Yeah, we're everywhere. Find us. But with that, let's go drink some wine off this podcast.
All right. Until next time.
Until next time.